Across the Isle of Man, water has always carried stories. Mountain streams cut through deep glens, dark pools gather beneath waterfalls, marshland stretches across the north, and the sea presses against almost every horizon. For generations, these places were not simply parts of the landscape. They were boundaries, places where strange sounds traveled farther at night, and where an animal seen for only a few seconds could become something remembered for a lifetime. Among the creatures said to inhabit those waters was one of the most unusual figures in Manx folklore, the Tarroo Ushtey, the water bull. The name itself is direct. Tarroo Ushtey means water bull. Unlike many supernatural beings, the creature was not usually described as a ghost, a spirit in human form, or a monster covered in impossible features. It was remembered as something disturbingly close to an ordinary bull. That similarity may have made the stories more unsettling. A farmer checking cattle or someone walking home in fading light might first believe that what they were seeing belonged there. Only its behavior, its eyes, its connection with water, or the way it vanished would reveal that the animal was something else. 19th century collectors described the Tarroo Ushtey as a bull-like creature of pools and swamps. Many of its old haunts were wetlands later transformed by drainage, farming, roads, and development. At Andreas in the flat northern country of the Oir, people remembered a Tarroo Ushtey living between the village and the sea to the west. The account specifically notes that this was before the land had been drained as it later was. Imagine that landscape then, low ground, reeds shifting in the wind, pools of dark water reflecting a gray Manx sky, cattle grazing nearby, and beyond them, the coast. Somewhere within that wet country, according to local tradition, the water bull moved. The story survived even after the habitat that had supported it in the imagination had largely disappeared. Another account came from an elderly sea captain at Peel. He recalled that when he was a boy, he had heard a Tarroo Ushtey. He could give little useful description of its appearance because what remained with him was not what he saw, but what he heard. The bellowing, he said, made the ground tremble. It is one of the most striking details in the surviving folklore. The sound was not simply loud. It was remembered as physical, a deep vibration, powerful enough to pass through the earth beneath the witness. Whatever produced it, the memory stayed with him into old age. The Tarroo Ushtey was also closely connected with ordinary farm cattle. Some traditions claimed that it left the water and mixed with domestic herds. Here, the Manx stories differ sharply from similar water bull traditions elsewhere in the Celtic world. In some Welsh legends, supernatural bulls from lakes were associated with strong cattle, fertility, and prosperity. The Manx water bull carried no such promise. Older accounts warned instead that when it bred with farm cattle, the result could be strangely formed or monstrous offspring. Its presence threatened the order of the farm itself. Some accounts made the creature far more physical. One tradition tells of men pursuing a strange bull that had been troubling cattle. Armed with poles and pitchforks, they chased it across rough ground until it reached a river. Instead of being trapped, the animal plunged into the water and swam away with apparent ease, repeatedly raising its head above the surface before disappearing. What might have begun as an incident involving a stray bull became something harder to classify the moment the animal reached the water. The most vivid encounters were recorded around Sleggaby and the parish of Onchan. In one story, the farmer of Sliu Mahil was returning home on a Sunday evening when a wild-looking animal crossed the road before him. Its eyes were described as large and shining like fire. He identified it as a Tarroo Ushtey because his own father had seen one near the same place. The story is important because it shows folklore passing directly through a family. The witness did not meet an unknown creature and invent a name later. He already possessed a framework for understanding what he believed he had seen. The same family tradition included another encounter nearby. Early one June morning, a man went to release cattle and saw a water bull standing outside the fold. The ordinary bull inside noticed the stranger and reacted violently. It broke through the enclosure, charged, roared, and tore at the ground. The Tarroo Ushtey ran, crossed the land ahead of its pursuer, reached a nearby precipice, and leapt into deep water below. According to the account, it then swam around as though completely at home before giving a loud bellow and disappearing beneath the surface. That pattern appears repeatedly in water bull traditions. The creature is encountered on land, challenged or pursued, and then escapes into water. The water is not merely where the animal happens to flee. It is its refuge, its defining territory, and the point at which ordinary pursuit becomes impossible. In a landscape filled with rivers, pools, boggy ground, and coastline, that behavior gave the legend a natural home. Other parts of the island developed their own traditions. Old notes mention Ramsey, Sleggaby, Ballakilfrick, and Curragh among places where water bulls were believed to have appeared. At Ramsey, one tradition placed a Tarroo Ushtey in the Morocco, where its roaring and splashing disturbed people nearby. The belief was apparently so familiar that when an unfamiliar foghorn was heard from offshore, local workers reportedly rushed out armed with whatever they could find, believing for a moment that the water bull had returned. At Bellow, another tradition placed a water bull in the curragh. People nearby claimed to hear its bellow during the dead hours of night. One later story tells of two young men crossing the area when something large and clumsy emerged from the wet ground, roaring so violently that it seemed to shake the earth. Its eyes were remembered as enormous and brightly illuminated. The frightened pair fled towards the road. Behind them, the creature gave another terrible bellow and plunged back into the swamp. There were darker stories, too. One account describes a ferocious water bull that repeatedly attacked farm animals near a river and marshy ground. After bullocks were found badly injured, the occupants of the farm kept watch and claimed to see the creature emerging from the deeper part of the gill. The farmer eventually brought a powerful bull from off the island to defend the herd. One dark night, violent noises suggested that the two animals were fighting. By morning, the farmer's bull was dead, apparently gored, while the water bull had vanished. The Tarroo Ushtey should also be distinguished from another famous Manx water creature, the Tarroo Ushtey, or water horse, and from traditions surrounding the Glashtin. Over time, stories about water horses, goblins, spirits, and amphibious animals could overlap, and later, writers did not always use the terms consistently. But the water bull maintained a distinct identity in many accounts. It was bovine rather than equine, closely connected with farm cattle, and repeatedly identified by its bellowing, its unusual eyes, and its ability to vanish into water. That local character may be the most important part of the legend. The Tarroo Ushtey did not inhabit a distant mythical kingdom. It was remembered beside roads people walked, fields they worked, rivers they crossed, and marshes visible from their homes. A father could tell his son where one had been seen. An old captain could remember its voice from childhood. Farmers could blame injured cattle on its presence. Workers hearing an unfamiliar sound through fog could briefly wonder whether the creature had returned. The legend survived because the landscape allowed it to feel possible. We cannot know what every witness saw. Some accounts may describe ordinary bulls transformed by darkness, distance, fear, and memory. Some may be older stories repeated as personal history. Others may have begun as warnings, explanations for injured livestock, or attempts to make sense of sounds coming from water at night. And some remain difficult to reduce because the original circumstances are gone. The marsh has been drained. The witness is dead. The farm has changed. What remains is the story. Perhaps that is why the Tarroo Ushtey still holds such a powerful place in Manx folklore. It occupies the narrow space between an animal that should be familiar and behavior that feels completely wrong. A bull standing in a field is ordinary. A bull emerging from a swamp, shaking the ground with its voice, crossing a road with shining eyes, leaping into deep water, or vanishing beneath a pool is something else entirely. The creature becomes frightening, not because it looks impossible, but because it looks almost normal. Across Andreas, Peel, Onchan, Ramsey, and the old curragh lands, the water bull survives in fragments. A bellow heard by a boy, a strange animal crossing a road, cattle breaking through a fence, men carrying pitchforks into darkness, something large moving through reeds, eyes reflecting light, a final splash followed by silence. None of these fragments proves that a supernatural creature ever lived in the waters of the Isle of Man. But together, they reveal a legend rooted deeply enough in the island that generations knew exactly what name to give the thing they feared. The Tarroo Ushtey was the water bull. It belonged to the pools, rivers, marshes, and sea. And according to the stories left behind, the most unsettling moment was not when it first appeared on land. It was when people watched it reach the water, plunge beneath the surface, and disappear into a place where no one could follow.